You know, the story of the Exodus is one of the most epic tales in history, right? But we usually only hear it from one side. Well, today, we're flipping the camera around. We're diving into a dramatic film script by Hisham Ali al-Diok that imagines the final, disastrous days of the legendary pharaoh himself, Ramesses II.
So, just to be clear, this isn't going to be your standard historical deep dive. Think of this more like a story breakdown. We're looking at how a modern writer took these ancient, monumental events and shaped them into a cinematic story, one that's just dripping with pride, conflict, and, ultimately, judgment. So, let's get into the script.
All right, so the script kicks off in the 67th year of Ramesses II's reign. And let me tell you, that is a long, long time to be in charge. He's an old man, a living legend, practically a god to his people. But you can feel it. Beneath all that gold and power, a storm is brewing. The conflict with the Prophet Moses is about to explode.
So here he is, our main character. Or is he the villain? The script paints a really clear picture. He's the absolute ruler of everything he sees. But he's up against a problem he can't just throw an army at. Moses is demanding freedom for his people, and Ramesses, who has gotten everything he's ever wanted for almost 70 years, well, he's not just dismissive, he's downright arrogant. His pride is everything. And boom, this line from the script says it all. It cuts right to the chase. In his eyes, these aren't people fighting for their freedom. They're just rabble. They're property. This isn't just a political statement, it's a declaration of his absolute power, and it's the one decision that kicks this whole tragedy into gear. But you have to ask, why is he so incredibly stubborn? What makes a man this unbending? Well, to get that answer, the script pulls out a classic Hollywood move, the flashback. We're zipping back 62 years to the single moment that forged this man's entire identity, the Battle of Kadesh.
As a young king, only 5 years into his reign, Ramesses gets completely played by enemy spies. He thinks the Hittite army is miles away, so he charges ahead and walks straight into a massive ambush. His army is shattered, he's surrounded, and it looks like it's all over. But right then, when all hope is lost, he does something insane. He gets in his chariot and personally leads a counterattack into the heart of the enemy.
And the crazy thing is, it worked. This act of pure, desperate bravery rallied his troops, and somehow he pulled a victory out of what should have been total annihilation. This moment became his legend. From that day on, he wasn't just a king. He was a warrior, a hero chosen by the gods. And after 60 years of telling that story, he started to believe he was genuinely, truly invincible.
So after that legendary battle, Ramesses' reign hits its golden age. He's not just a warrior anymore. He becomes this master diplomat, a builder on an epic scale, a living legend who decides he's going to carve his story into the very stone of Egypt, so no one will ever forget him. I mean, just look at this resume. He signs a historic peace treaty with the Hittites, the very guys who almost wiped him out, and even marries their princess to seal the deal. Then he starts the biggest construction spree Egypt has ever seen. We're talking colossal statues of himself, giant temples like Abu Simbel, and so many obelisks he gets nicknamed the Pharaoh of the Stakes. He wasn't just ruling Egypt anymore. He was literally remaking the country in his own image. And all of that brings us right back to where the script started. Here's this old king, the hero of Kadesh, the master builder, who has known nothing but success for decades. And now he's facing a challenge that he can't fight, he can't build his way out of, and he certainly can't beat with a chariot charge.
And it all boils down to this: an absolute clash of wills. On one side, you've got the Pharaoh's decree, pure earthly power. They are my slaves, they stay. And on the other, you have Moses, delivering a divine command. It's really a showdown between the will of a man who thinks he's a god and the will of God himself.
The script is really smart about the plagues. It doesn't treat them like random natural disasters. No, each plague is a direct attack, an escalating challenge to the pharaoh's authority and the gods of Egypt. But every single time, Ramesses thinks back to Kadesh. He thinks about how he stared down defeat and won, and his pride, it just won't let him back down. It takes the absolute devastation of the final plague, the death of the firstborn, to finally break him.
But of course, a pride that deep doesn't just disappear. The moment the Israelites are out of sight, that old arrogance comes roaring back. And this is what leads to the script's massive climax, the final, furious chase to the shores of the Red Sea.
And just like he did all those years ago at Kadesh, Ramesses himself leads the charge. He gathers his absolute best chariots, 600 of them, and they thunder after the Israelites. He catches them too, pins them right against the sea. Militarily speaking, it's a brilliant move. He's got them trapped, is checkmate.
So this is it, the moment of truth. The hero of Kadesh has enemy exactly where he wants them. There's nowhere for them to run. By all the laws of war, of physics, of reality, this should be the end of the story for the Israelites. But what happens next isn't about laws.
And then the impossible happens. The sea literally splits in two, creating a dry path right through the middle of it. The perfect trap has just been completely undone by a miracle.
Now this is the Pharaoh's last and most fatal mistake. Any other man might see the sea part and think, you know what, maybe I should turn back. But not Ramesses, not the man who believed he was invincible. Blinded by rage and a lifetime of believing his own legend, he gives the order and his army charges into the seabed. And with that one command, the trap finally snaps shut, but it doesn't close on the Israelites, it closes on the Pharaoh and on the entire might of the Egyptian army. The waves come crashing back, and in an instant, the most powerful man on earth is simply gone.
The climax is over, but the story isn't quite done. The script moves into its final act, its epilogue, showing us the quiet, stunned aftermath as the news of this unbelievable disaster starts to trickle back to an empire that just lost its god king.
And this is what's called a denouement, right? The big action is over, and now we're left to deal with the consequences. Who's left? What happens now? How does a whole nation even begin to process the news that their invincible king isn't coming home?
The news arrives in the form of a single, shell-shocked soldier named Neferhotep. He's the lone survivor. He stumbles back to the palace, holding the pharaoh's ring, the only proof of the impossible story he has to tell the new pharaoh. The legend of Ramesses the Great is finally over.
And that's where the script leaves us, with this one last thing to think about. Ramesses II spent his entire life carving his own legend into stone, doing everything he could to make sure he'd be remembered forever. But in the end, the story of his downfall became even more famous than all of his victories. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? No matter how powerful you become, do you ever really get to write your own ending?